before I realize it, I'm looking at these guys and they're shoplifting. And I'll tell you what, like at that moment I was like, oh man, like I think I'm starting to figure this place out a little bit, right? And so the pre-contract that I had with a club it didn't come to fruition because the person on the ground that met me was telling me and my old coach, who he was communicating with as well, hey, well, he's gonna have to pay $1,000 or €1,000 to get into that environment now.
To train.
Yeah. So we were just like, that is not what was agreed. That's not what was talked about. So within 3-4 days, packed my bags and came home. Going pro was always something that I was like, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I didn't know when or how, but I really manifested that from a young age.
Hard work got first, yeah. Hard work got first, yeah. Hard work got first, yeah. To the day I'm in the dirt, yeah. Jesus Christ is Lord, yeah. I know who I serve, yeah. When my life was hard, yeah.
What's up, guys? Welcome to today's video and welcome back to the channel. Again, my name is Malik Shahid and we're in another episode of what I call Speaking With. So with this playlist, I'm just trying to unearth kind of the reality of playing lower level professional soccer, and I think a really valuable asset for my experiences and the environments that I'm in are the people that I get to share a locker room with every day. So again, just kind of bringing light to these different stories, these different backgrounds to show you guys that I think we all have these ambitions of playing at a really high level. You know, we all want to be playing in the Premier League, but some of us, we land kind of at a lower mountain, and just kind of revealing what that reality is like and the joys that can be found there too. So today I've got the pleasure of speaking with MUMBI KWESELE, who's been a good friend of mine for a couple of years now. Also currently my teammate, of course, and my roommate, as well as our captain here at Flower City. So MUMBI, pleasure having you on. Appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Oh, of course. It's awesome to see you rebuild this channel, and I'm excited to speak with you today. So
awesome. Do you want to do just kind of like a brief intro to the people in terms of like where you are coming from and who you are?
Yeah. So as Malik said, my name is MUMBI KWESELE. I grew up in Seattle, Washington. I went to college at Barry University in Miami, Florida, and also Humboldt State University in California. From there, I went to play professionally in Spain, and then since then, I've been playing for the last 4 years in the U.S.
Nice. So growing up in Seattle, what was the culture, the environment you were kind of growing up in there, both on and off the field?
Yeah, I would say off the field, my family's pretty tight-knit. I come from an African culture. My mom is Zambian, my dad is Congolese, but very, very similar values, very good people, and from a young age, just learning how to treat people, how to conduct yourself. That was definitely fundamental to my upbringing. I was always close with my siblings, and just learning how to respect people, learning how to have drive and ambition. Watching my parents work as I grew up. For example, my dad worked 2-3 jobs, and so that always instilled in me values of hard work. My mom was always taking care of her family. That instilled in me values of love and kindness and care. And so from those two people, obviously, that's who I try to be. And my siblings are no different. So, as the youngest, I've always had examples to look up to. And so that was, my upbringing off the field. On the field, I would say that, it was tough because at a young age, at that time, there weren't a lot of knowledgeable coaches. You look at the opportunities that kids have today, and to be honest, it's night and day. Back then, if you wanted to get into a competitive space, the people that were coaching you were parents that, didn't really play at a high level. If we talk about coaching education, that's something completely different, right? Yeah. That wasn't really around as it is today, and people weren't doing it really, and so you're learning to play the game, but you're not necessarily learning from, for example, the coaching or from the way that the environment is set up, and so in certain ways it holds you back. And then still, one of the similar things that relates to today, though, is finding access to those quality environments, to quality coaching, to quality players, they were always further away, right? And they were always more expensive.
Yeah.
And so, my access to finding some of those teams was very limited. And so, at 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, I was developing really, really well. It helps to have an older brother who's a soccer fanatic, an older brother who, was advancing through the levels. Obviously, he was the first one in my family to do that. But if I didn't have him, then my trajectory would have obviously been different.
Yeah.
But to have that reference point, to see him play at a high club level, to see him then go play in college. I mean, by the time he was going to college, to play at Santa Clara, I was only 9, 10 years old.
Okay.
So seeing that was definitely inspiring. It was something that set me on the path that I'm on. And I understand not every kid has that. So that's where I was blessed and privileged to have that kind of example in my life. But in terms of the environment, it was tough. The best teams were 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
The better coaches, 45 minutes away. The better players, 45 minutes away. And so by the time I hit 12, 13, the progress I'd made from 8 to 12 was very, very good. And of course, I'd started playing when I was, 5, pretty much 6 years old, organized. But then after 12, it's so much harder because those years, 12, 13, 14, that's really where you see a player start to blossom, right? You're not finished at 14.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that. But you start to see kids do that. And then that's when, in that time, in Washington at least, the academy started being formed.
Okay.
And so the kids that were in those top teams naturally were filtered into at that time the DA. And the 2 teams we had in the DA at that time were Crossfire and Sounders.
Okay.
And so I wasn't one of the players selected for those teams. I wasn't one of the players selected for the ODP programs that were obviously a big deal before the DA, just because that's where all the top players could go.
Yeah.
To the regional events and the training sessions and those things, right? So I was in that pool once, I think, and trained a couple times, but again, there's so many different kids. I understand the identification system isn't perfect, but that was my upbringing in youth soccer, and so it was tough. It wasn't easy to make it out, but I think a genuine love and desire to continue to grow and to continue to keep playing was why I did end up, for example, even just going to play in college. Not even talking about me playing professionally, but just even going to play college.
Yeah.
There were so few kids that were doing it, and so just I feel like that love, that desire is what pushed me forward. Yeah,
that's huge. Yeah. Even in this last episode, speaking with Angelo, of course, growing up in a similar area, and he had mentioned that he really struggled to really, I guess, make the jump to the highest level that is offered in that area. And I think he had kind of a mentor named Stu, and that was really big for him in terms of pushing him on in his career, pushing him to develop. And he says that he wouldn't have the same career without Stu. So is it kind of a similar sentiment towards your older brother than just someone that was always driving you to get better, as well as revealing to you what was possible, even coming from your area?
Yeah, 100%. Because to be quite honest with you, there were maybe only 1 or 2 coaches that I connected with in my youth soccer career.
Okay.
And it's a combination of things. It's who people are, because soccer knowledge and coaching is one thing. I think connecting with a person is another.
Yeah.
And so, I had that in my brother. I had both things, right? Obviously, we come from the same family. But also the soccer knowledge is there for him, and he's continued to grow and develop that knowledge, and he continues to share that with me even to this day. But he was always consistently that figure for me. Again, maybe 1 or 2 other coaches that I also connected with on a personal level, and then also with the soccer.
Okay.
But it was a lot harder to come by.
Yeah.
And honestly, as time passed, it got harder as clubs started to merge. The infrastructure that was being built just became so big, and so honestly, this is an issue today. there were less relationships being formed. It was now more of a transaction, and it's, well, I'm signing up to play in these clubs, but you're just, it's essentially a situation where the clubs are bringing in so many kids and so many families, but they're not connecting with them. You know, and that's one of the downsides of you know, jumping into that, or jumping into those waters. You know, the connections are lost a little bit when you start a club with, you know, 10, 12 teams. Everybody can know each other. Everybody can, you know, build a community feeling, and then a couple years later, clubs merge, they sign agreements, this, that, and the other, and now you have these massive territories, and you have these clubs that are, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus teams, thousands of kids. Where's that community feeling? You know, and in a lot of ways, it becomes, okay, well, what's our status? You know, what are we winning? You know, what events are we going to? And it becomes less about the development, and it becomes less about relationships. What I'm so happy and proud about is there are several relationships that I still have with coaches when I was, you know, playing U10, U11. There are relationships with players that I played with, you know, to this day, that I played with at U11, U12. And that's special because I'm not going to say it doesn't exist now. I can't speak on other people's relationships, but the landscape is completely changed now. Completely changed. And back then, we weren't really, we weren't playing for status in the, you know, they call it now, they refer to it like the alphabet. There's the ECNL, the MPL, and all this, the MLS next, and, you know, Super Y, US Club, like there's just so much stuff. And back then that didn't exist. And to be honest with you, to go to a conversation about inclusivity, that was so cool because there were so many different cultures that we were around before it became about the money. So growing up, you know, we'd go to these tournaments, and even for us, we weren't a big club. I played for HSA back then. Highline Heat was what we were called. And on the girls' side, they were called HSA Eagles. But we were one of the quote-unquote bigger clubs. But we would go to these tournaments, and we would play the most random, and I mean that in such a great way, such a beautiful way, most random teams. We would play these Latino teams, these Hispanic teams. Pumas, Atlas, whatever they would call themselves in that area, right? Maybe whoever their parents supported. But
of course.
These teams were amazing, incredible. And that feeling of playing them, like we would play so well and get to a final and then just get ruined, like 8-9-0 by these kids. And you're just like, oh my God. But they were so good. You know, and it was very humbling because you're like, whoa, they're playing the game a completely different way. So much more passion. There's so much more technical. You know, we had kids who, you know, come to training and they touch a ball only at training, you know, 2 times a week or however many times a week we trained, and you could tell these kids touch the ball every day. You could tell these kids had older brothers like me. They had dads, they had uncles, they had cousins that they would go play with. You could tell in the street. You could tell, obviously, I went once or twice, I wish I'd gone more growing up, to these Latino Hispanic leagues. It was incredible to see, you know, and these were the teams that we would play against. And it was very, very cool. You know, at that time, it seemed as if the game was more accessible. And now, you don't go to these tournaments and see those independent teams, really. Like now, it's all tiered, right? And so to enter those tournaments, you're only pretty much looking at the recognized names in terms of the youth soccer scene, right? Those bigger tournaments they're very exclusive. And so now some of the tournaments that are, you know, local, that maybe didn't jump on that bandwagon, those are the tournaments now that people say, oh, we don't go to that tournament anymore. But that tournament is still accessible to some of those local neighborhood teams that weren't able to make that jump because of, you know, maybe finances or because of because of qualifications, right? Like you have to apply for these things,
Yeah.
for these leagues, for these certifications. You have to have a certain amount of coaches on specific licenses, right? So coaching education, there's a lot of different things. And so if you're serving, predominantly black and brown demographics that are low income, it's so much harder. And so some of these kids completely fell off the map, unfortunately, and they were such good players.
Yeah.
A couple of them make it through to the bigger clubs, whether on scholarship or whatever. Some of them are fortunate enough to be identified and go into an environment like Sounders where they don't have to pay. But again, for every kid that makes Sounders, there's still hundreds of other kids that have ability that will never go near that environment.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you touch on a lot of really big points in terms of not only the difference between the environment that you grew up in and really the culture of soccer in the U.S. from then versus today. But yeah, I mean, even just the larger, I wouldn't say issues, yeah, maybe issues that we're facing as we're in this professional scene. But you of course are in that coaching realm where you're seeing this change, you're a part of this change, and you're kind of getting the behind the scenes look at what you were experiencing as a kid, or the difference between what you experienced then versus now. So that's a really cool point of view perspective now. And you said you were playing with HSA, and did you go all the way like through high school with that club?
No, so what happened was I spent about 8 years with HSA.
Okay.
And then I had a injury, and I was out for about a year and a half, and then at that point, that's when I transitioned clubs.
Okay.
So I went from HSA to a club called GRFC.
Okay.
GRFC was a boys club in the Renton area, Greater Renton Football Club, and basically within a year of me kind of moving over to them, I was just guest playing and training with them. They merged. We're talking about merging, right, with this all girls club called DOS Vidania. So that became Pac Northwest, and that's where I finished my club soccer career. Was with Pac Northwest, and honestly, I wish it was around sooner. I only played with them 1 year, but the experience was, I thought it was a special one. I met a lot of great people, and we had a really, really good team. That was a fun experience. That was the most fun I had playing youth soccer was that year. Not because of necessarily the success we had, and we played really well together, but just the feeling, the vibe of that group was really good.
Nice. So you said you were there just for 1 year. Was that just your senior year?
Junior to senior year, yeah.
Okay, so you had that big injury, like, what was that, sophomore, junior year? Freshman year.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez Louise. So did that, I guess the length of that injury, or I guess however much it affected you in terms of playing, did that affect your recruiting process at all?
Actually, I'll be honest, like it really didn't.
Okay.
It really didn't. I was identified the summer going into my senior year.
Okay.
So obviously joined a new team that spring when I was a junior. We start training, and then that summer we start playing games, and then I'm going into my senior year of high school. And so that, June, July is when I was identified and started talking to a couple schools. So yeah, it didn't affect my process at all. I was right on time actually for when I needed to be seen by schools. Because honestly, I think also in a way that the timeline of when players are identified has obviously sped up because there's so many different organizations and entities and these showcases and tournaments. Again, we didn't travel and play the way that they're playing now. I mean, we played in a Washington league. It was called the RCL, and that's where all the top teams were playing. We didn't play in an ECNL at that time. We didn't play in an MLS Next at that time. That wasn't what we were doing. So, that was the context of that time.
All right, nice. So you said you were talking to a few schools, and then you eventually ended up landing at Barry University first, right? So what was your experience like there?
Yeah, Barry was interesting. I think first and foremost, The head coach was an amazing person, a really, really good human being. We still stay in touch. Steve McCrath is great. I think during the recruiting process, I was so bought into the idea of playing for Steve, and for playing for that kind of coach who, backed me, who believed in me, obviously who wanted to bring me in, who through the recruiting process gave me so much feedback. Pretty much throughout the recruiting process, he was predominantly the only coach I was speaking to.
Okay.
Came and watched me play in July. My coach let me know, hey, this coach, Barry University, was watching you. I'm like, Barry? I had to go Google, like, oh, where's Barry? Oh, Miami. Oh,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
And then we started to email, and for the next 7-8 months, we emailed a ton.
Okay.
And he had me send him pretty much a video every month from July all the way till January. So I would play. I would drive over to my my teammate's house because his dad would record all the games.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah, and I would. He was great, and he was on top of things. Every game he had his stand, his tripod, his camera. Like he was on it.
Oh, he's like manning it himself.
Yeah, I think he had a pretty decent tripod setup.
Okay.
And so it wasn't shaky or anything.
Yeah.
Like he did a pretty good job.
Okay.
But like I honestly think technology's come a long way. There was maybe an easier way for us to do it, but I think it was also the technology of the camera.
Okay.
And just the software that I had to go over in person, and then we would kind of sit there and then wait for the game to be properly uploaded.
Yeah.
And then we had to use like the software had to use, like, it was funny, my videos, there was like this fat watermark on the video because
Okay.
the software we used to, what's the word I'm looking for, to kind of like to render, to the video had to be, it was so big, the files were so large, we had to shrink them.
Okay.
And the software we used had placed this watermark on the videos, and I think it was called like Wondershare or something.
Okay, yeah.
I'll show you. It's
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, we'd sit there for hours.
Yeah.
And upload the video, and then I would have just this fat file on my computer. And honestly, I think a lot of times we use CDs, and my laptop had like a CD port, so I would put the CD in the laptop port. But when I got home, I would have like 10 of them because of all the games. And then I would just comb through the footage and pick out my highlights, and then I would make the highlight videos myself. Luckily, yeah, when I was in high school, I learned how to edit videos.
huge.
Yeah. There was a video production class in my high school, and they had really good tech. I had a new Mac, so I had the tech I needed, the Final Cut Pro system. And in high school we learned we were making movies and doing different kinds of editing, and my video production teacher was awesome. It was such a creative process, and it was such an awesome tool because it's a tool that I've used for like over 10 years now, right? Being able to make different highlight videos, make short movies, things like that. And so that's what I would do. I'd create those videos, and then I would send them to the coach in Miami, to Steve, and then he would send me an email with feedback. Hey, these 2-3 things are good. Here's 2-3 things to work on.
Okay.
And that's how we would kind of go back and forth. It wasn't until I think late September that I went on an official visit.
Okay.
And the visit went well, but even after the visit, if that was September, October, November, December, January, we were still communicating. I still sent him 3-4 more videos of the rest of my fall season. I sent him, videos of the state cup that my team played in. So it was only pretty much, I think, in the knockout rounds of the state cup in January, before February started, that they sent me, a letter saying that, we want you to commit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome though, honestly, just to have a coach that's invested in the recruiting process, to not only, be investing in you, getting to know you as a person, but also giving you feedback to improve whether he was going to sign you or not. That was probably huge for your senior year. So
Absolutely. It was great. And then I was going to say, like, I think the experience of actually going to Miami, to the school and living there and playing there, I'll be honest, man, I think one of the things I'm really adamant about when I speak to kids today, and to parents, to families in general, is you have to do your research on every single facet of the college experience that you can. And so for me, I've split it into 3 areas, right? You have the school, you have the soccer, and then you have the social piece, right? So for the school, it's like that's your life as a student. For the soccer, it's your life as a player, and obviously for the social piece, it's your life as a person, right? And to be quite honest with you, Miami was kind of wild. Yeah, it was. There was definitely a lot of culture shock in Miami. I arrived and I was honestly, I think pretty naive as to how the world worked. I think in general, I thought that, you know, it was sunshine and rainbows to a certain degree. Like I hadn't, some of the things, I'll tell you what I saw, some of the things and experience, but they weren't things that I experienced, you know, except for 17, 18 years, you know, things that were kind of like normalized over there. So I'll give you a couple examples. Like Miami in general, it's a party culture, right? It's a place where going out every day is a thing, you know, and that's kind of what my experience was like in that team, right? Like I think a lot of guys, and not just on my team, but just in that culture, in that setting, in that school, like it was about going out, partying, drinking, right? And making real connections was tough. You know, it's tough to make connections with people who are always, if you're not this way, at least, who are always going out, who are always drinking, who are like, it becomes this really interesting lifestyle, this interesting pattern. And it wasn't one that I necessarily got used to or vibed with. Doesn't mean that I didn't go out or I didn't enjoy, you know, a new culture and trying to learn a new culture. I think that's not what I would say, but I would say that sometimes just ethically I was like, this is just all wrong, this is backwards. So I guess the other example I'll give you is within the first, I think, 2-3 weeks of me being in Miami, you know, I think it was a Sunday, so we had a day off. So, you know, we were going through preseason and the season was about to start, and I went to the big Biscayne Mall with 2 teammates. Okay. And when you arrive in a new place, everybody's buddy, right? Everybody's, you know, making a good first impression. You have no idea who people are, and so you're learning, right? And you know, you want to be accepted, you want to be liked in the group, because you're like, oh, well, I'm going to be here for 4 years. Like, I got to get to know people, and which I was keen to do. So, but anyway, went to the mall with 2 local guys. One was a freshman like me, another one was a sophomore. And, you know, I'm just thinking, oh, it's a normal day, like we're just chilling. And before I realize it, I'm looking at these guys and they're shoplifting. And I'll tell you what, like at that moment I was like, oh man, like I think I'm starting to figure this place out a little bit, right? And I'm not gonna generalize about the entire place, but I'm gonna say that just the culture of I want to be cool, or I want to look cool, or I need to be accepted if I'm wearing these clothes or if I'm doing these things. Like it was just so foreign to me, and I was just in shock. Like I didn't move because I'm watching them. I'm like, wait a second, like what is going on? Like I'm almost like I feel like I'm outside of my body watching it happen, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm having this huge moral dilemma. Right? And obviously for me, in that setting, I've never shoplifted in my life. So I bought my clothes. I think it was like H&M or something. I bought my clothes, and I'm just walking around. I've got my bag, I've got my receipt, I've got my clothes in there, and I see these guys, like, for example, one guy like took off his shoes, put them on the rack, like where the shoes were on the display, and then put on a brand new shoes and just casually walked out of the store. And I'm just like, what? Like, and another guy was like, hey, give me your bag. And I'm like, bro, like, why would I give you my bag? Like, you're not paying for these things. Like, you're just trying to, And so I'm at one point just kind of walk out of the store. I'm just kind of standing on my own, like just like what is going on?
Yeah.
They go to 2 more stores, the same thing, and I think in the 3rd store is when one of the alarms went off.
Okay.
And one of the guys was holding a bag, and he somehow talked his way out of it. Security came, he talked his way out of it. The other guy took off. And I just remember then at that point being like, man, this sucks. Because I was like, this is not what I signed up for, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing is, you know, afterwards, you know, we're on the drive home, I'm just kind of silent. When we get back to the dorms, I'm talking to one of the guys, I'm like, listen, man, like what was that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, because I'm processing this whole time. It was a 15-20 minute drive back, and I'm just processing. So when we get back, I'm just like, dude, like, what were you doing?
Yeah.
And this is when I realized that I couldn't be, not that this would have made my entire experience to be friends with everyone on my team, but this is when I realized that it was going to be very hard for me to have real friends in that setting, in that environment. Because I think a real friend is someone that holds you accountable. I think a real friend is someone you share similar values with, right? And it's hard to hold someone accountable, or to it's just hard to be in the same space as someone who has values that are completely the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? People that will lie, cheat, and steal. I didn't grow up that way. So it was hard for me because I saw more incidents like that. That's just obviously a prime example.
Yeah. Within your first 3 weeks.
Yeah, within my first 3 weeks. Yeah, and so when I asked them, just all these like excuses, like, oh nah, dude, like it's fine. You know, like, oh, we do that all the time. Like it's just normal, bro. Everybody does it. I'm like, I don't do that.
Yeah, not everybody.
That's not how I've grown up. That's not how. You're like, nah, man, like it's fine. Like, be cool. And I literally was like, if you guys got caught, and I'm standing in that area and I'm with you, I didn't steal anything. I paid for my stuff, but maybe I'm lumped in with you.
Yeah.
And maybe you get arrested potentially, right? And within the first month, maybe we all get kicked off the team.
Yeah.
And I'm asking these questions and just no response back that was thought out, that was where it showed like kind of reflection. And I'm just like, I was just so disappointed. And from there, I felt like that set me up in a way that was just like,
it's gonna be a struggle.
this is gonna be hard.
Yeah,
man. Like I think about just what it means to be on a team and people looking out for each other. And so many times I felt exposed in that setting. Other situations, we would go out as a team, and I feel like it's okay to say this just because it's the context it happens. For guys who aren't 21, if you want to get into places, not even to drink or do whatever, but just to get into places, you have to be 21. You have to have an ID, right? So, through some friends, through some people, everybody that's under 21 was able to get an ID from someone, right? And if the whole team's going out, like, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna go out with my team. And so I got an ID, I was able to go out. But there were some places where maybe you couldn't get in, so you're just kind of sitting on your own that night with whoever else didn't get in. That was the kind of going on at that time. But I specifically remember a night where me and my roommate didn't get in one night with everyone. And so it's not like everybody like came out, oh, let's go find a different spot because these guys didn't get in there. I was like, nah, I didn't care. Like, we got our group, like,
sucks to be them.
Yeah, it sucks to be them. Like, they'll be all right. They'll be fine. So we, my roommate and I, we had a good connection. We still have a good relationship. We just kind of sat and talked for 3-4 hours. Now, the place that we went was about 45 minutes away from campus. So, obviously, we were bummed to not be able to join in that night, but we hung out together and talked. Now, when it came time to leave, and so this is around like 2 a.m. We got there around like 10.
Yeah.
Like 2 a.m., almost 3 a.m. We're calling people, like, all right, like, ready to go home now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, well, like, what's going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's get out of here. Let's go home. Like, I mean, we were just chilling, just us two, but like, whatever. But we want to get out of here.
Yeah.
And we're calling people, they're not picking up, right? And then all of a sudden, we see our teammates leaving the place, because we were like across the street now, just hanging out. We see them leaving the place, and they're with just a bunch of different people. Like, for example, like a bunch of girls, like, but we knew, like, athletes, whatever, but, like, again, not picking up the phone, not checking for us.
Yeah.
And we're like, yo, the car we came in is small. Like, it was 4 of us.
Yeah.
It was like a really tightly packed car. So it was like, you could only fit 4 people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the driver, the passenger in the front seat, and then the 2 in the back. And we were crammed. So I'm like, yo, if you're bringing 2-3 people back in your car, like, there's no room for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so literally, beeline, we were sprinting across the street and chasing them down to be like, yo, so you guys were just gonna leave us? You know?
Yeah.
And so my roommate was more upset than I was.
Okay.
And because again, I was just frozen. I'm just
Yeah.
like, yo, like they were really
Just
gonna,
like, can't even believe it.
yeah, like they were really just gonna leave us here. 2 of those guys were the 2 guys that I'd gone to the mall with.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
like a month prior to this incident.
Okay.
And so I'm just like, man, I'm really figuring out who you guys are. But
Yeah.
then I'm also just so disappointed because I'm like, what did we do? What did I do to deserve that?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, dude, like we're 45 minutes away from campus. Like we don't know anybody else,
Yeah.
right? Like if you guys leave, like and everybody else had already scattered.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're gonna take like a taxi or an Uber, like dude, we don't have money for like that's gonna cost like a 45-minute Uber.
Yeah, at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, that's gonna cost you over like $100, $150,
Yeah.
or maybe $200. And so again, my roommate was he was going off the rails, and I'm just sat there like, oh man, like how is that possible? That
Yeah.
you know. So that was another incident where you're just like, man, like people just do not look out for each other
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, and I
yeah.
imagine, like you said, that was such a culture shock given the values that you saw with your
Yeah.
parents daily.
Yeah.
You know, of course, probably replicated by your older siblings as well. And it's just, yeah, a complete, 180 to what you grew up in.
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000%. And so, that was my first year. I think it helped to have people on the team that I did connect with. There were 2-3 guys that I was really close to. The unfortunate part was that I think 2 of those guys were graduating after that, fall season or in the spring, whatever, they were done with the team.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had 1 guy that I was really close to.
Okay.
Yeah, it just made it hard.
Yeah.
Because again, more incidents like that happen, and you're just like, man, like it's hard to be around some of these people. You know what I mean? And you're around them every day.
Yeah.
As an athlete, my life on campus, just everything I was doing right then and there was about the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have time to connect with other people outside of the team.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, obviously you connect a little bit with people that you have class with,
Yeah.
but it was hard, man. That was my life. And so that became really, really difficult, especially the second year. When I started to struggle more personally, it made it tough. And then that's what led to me transferring.
Okay. So yeah, different days compared to usual. There wasn't quite a transfer portal, right? You just kind of had that conversation with the head coach, and what was that process like for you getting over to Humboldt at that point?
Yeah, the process. So I had a detour, and that detour led me to Seattle University actually.
Okay.
Yeah, because that previous summer, everyone's at home playing, training. I was playing for my old club. We had a U23 team.
Okay.
And we had a scrimmage, I think, against the Sound U23s.
Okay.
And Seattle U was there. I think several of their players were training and playing with Sound U23s. And so, again, I got word from one of my coaches, Seattle U was watching, and they liked what they saw. And so that fall season, I went back to Miami, and I wasn't set on transferring. I really wasn't. But as things started to get worse for me, and as I felt more disconnected from the experience in Miami, from my teammates, that's when I was like, all right, man, like this is not working out. Like I need to make a change, and there's a potential place for me to go. So that's when I talked to the coach, and then it was a pretty simple process. But yeah, no transfer portal.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit hectic, but I was able to make that move to Seattle University, and that was my in-between spot.
Okay.
And so I spent a winter and spring quarter there.
Okay.
Spring season training, playing. Came in, and it wasn't necessarily given a spot, given a squad number, anything like that.
Okay.
It was an opportunity to prove myself. That was an interesting experience because I was brought in, but then kind of left to fend for my own. And I think despite that adversity, there were moments that I played really well. I'm not going to sit here and say that I was the best player in that team or anything like that. I think I did some very, very good things, but I think that when you're given very little in terms of support, it's really hard to go into that kind of environment, because at that time Seattle U was building. They were becoming a really, really good program.
Yeah.
And for example, it was tough to reach the coach. I transferred and I didn't hear from him or see him for like I think over a month.
Really?
And during the winter quarter, the players were training on their own, captain's practices.
Okay.
So, but again, if I'm not being connected to them, I didn't feel like, oh, I can go and just show up. Like I would have felt like, oof,
Yeah.
that's really hard.
Old stuff. So yeah, you mentioned like that difficult experience in terms of going to Seattle U and trying to get into the team and really, I guess, not being super welcomed or received there, and eventually finding your way to Humboldt. And you had 2 years at Humboldt, right?
Two full years. Yeah.
Okay. So what were those 2 years like?
They were good. I think at that moment I was really clear about what I needed to get out of that experience. I needed to go in and play as much as possible. I needed to continue to develop as a player, because for me, these were the critical 2 years to help me then take the next step to the pro level.
Okay.
So,
At what point did you decide you wanted to play professionally?
well, so that there could be a bunch of answers to that question, and the reason I say that is because for as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a professional player. For my first time watching games on TV as young as 5 years old with my brother, so that timeline, I'm thinking I saw images of, like, obviously when I was really young, I don't remember many of the images, but I remember the '98 World Cup, like seeing the images, not the games, and remember what happened.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing the images now of the Euro 2000.
Okay.
And I'm seeing this guy on France do all this stuff. I'm like, who is this? My brother was idolizing Zidane. So I was like, oh, he was the first player that I really remember watching.
Okay.
And then I do remember 2002,
Okay.
Japan, South Korea, that World Cup. I remember Euro 2004, and now I'm 70 years old, but I've seen now a couple major tournaments that I'm vividly remembering.
Yeah.
I'm remembering France, England 2004, Beckham missing his penalty, Zidane winning the game, with 2 goals. Like I remember, I'm picking up on so much, and for me, my brother was like, oh yeah, he's like, I want to go pro, and I'm following him. I want to go pro as well, right? Going pro was always something that I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I didn't know when or how,
Yeah.
but I really manifested that from a young age.
Okay.
And it helps that by the time I was 12, my brother had signed pro for the Portland Timbers.
Okay.
When they were in the USL.
Okay.
So, I got to be in that setting. I remember there was like a week I stayed in Portland after a tournament that my team had played, and I stayed with my brother and his roommate, who was on the team as well, and I got to go to practice every day. The coach was cool. He let me take pictures and stuff. The guys on the team were really nice, really welcoming. I got to be in the locker room on game day.
Huge.
So, and again, the stadium has now been renovated, but it was called PG&E Park. I think it's Providence Park now.
Okay.
But it was like, at that time it was like a baseball stadium, but they still had a massive crowd of people. Atmosphere, the energy of the Portland Timbers. And you think about this, like I grew up as a Sounders fan.
Yeah.
But then for about a year or two there, I'm a Portland fan, because my brother and the team was, they had a couple good seasons in that time. I just remember being in the locker room and being around the guys, and they were so cool, so welcoming. So even now as a professional, when kids approach me or whatever, I try to be as kind as I can be, take my time with them, because those guys were awesome with me. One of the guys even gave me his boots that I used for a little while. Yeah, because I had to wait I think a couple months to use them.
Yeah.
But I was growing fast at this time, but then I was able to use them for about a year, and I vividly remember that there were these white Nike Tiempos. And it was awesome because I was like, oh man, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll always remember that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's a proper lifelong dream then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It came full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. it came full
Okay.
circle.
So going into Humboldt then, that I don't want to say there was a pressure, but there was a real intentionality to these last 2 years. Like I gotta make sure that I'm training well, I'm getting into games, I'm performing well, and
Yeah.
preparing yourself well to take that next jump.
Absolutely. I didn't know how or when it was going to happen. I think I knew which avenues were closed off to me just because of a lot of things, because of maybe the school I was playing at, the level I was playing at. I knew that I wasn't going to go to the MLS draft or MLS combine. I think it's really important to yes, have a dream, have a goal in mind, but then also map out some different ways to getting there, because it would have been delusional for me to like, oh, I'm going to be invited to the MLS combine. Like, no, I'm not. Unless I'd scored like 50, 60 goals.
Yeah.
Even then, maybe at D2 I wouldn't be looked at. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a lot tougher from certain positions, right? And so once you understand your positionality, you understand how you might be able to break in. So my way of breaking in was my old coach from club was in Spain. And he was running, he's still running a business, a company that has a residency program and also brings teams and players and groups for different group experiences and for training, training programs in Spain. So, he'd established that a few years before, and he said to me, hey, well, when you're done, maybe we can reconnect. Maybe I can have you come out to Spain. And so those conversations became more and more serious as, time passed, and specifically heading into my senior year at Humboldt. And so he was like, all right, yeah, we can help you find a team, and you're going to work for the company, and that's how we're going to get you over here. Because at that time, I didn't have an agent. I didn't have any teams or scouts looking at me to take me into the USL, or I don't even think NISA was formed yet at that time, 2017. I think NISA was formed 2018, 2019.
I think 2019, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. So the opportunities were limited to break into the pro game. And so, so I went to Spain, and that's how I started my pro journey. I was in the lower leagues there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, and of course, like I said, we've been friends for a couple of years now. Of course, we're roommates, so I've heard a ton of stories just with Spain and everywhere you've been. But I guess, what were some of the most formative moments for you in Spain, and how long were you there?
I visited Spain like 2-3 times before I started living there, but in the time that I lived there, it was about a year.
Okay.
I was there for a season.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what level were you playing at?
So I was playing in the 5th division.
Okay.
In Division de Honor over there.
Which is quality.
Very quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a bit of a culture shock, both like on and off the field, in regard to the play style, as well as just the style of living in Spain? The style of living was definitely different. The Basque country in particular is unique even within Spain. The Basque culture, the Basque people, the Basque language is very, very unique. Obviously, Spain has different regions, but the Basque are on a different on a different page. That experience was tough in some ways, because obviously if I'm trying to learn and speak Spanish, and I'm hearing and surrounded by Basque, which is a completely different language that has no root to French or Spanish, any of the romantic languages, nothing. So I'm hearing Basque, I'm like, dude, what is this? So I'm praying everywhere I go I can at least hear some Spanish so that I can kind of get by, right? So that was tough. That was an adjustment. I think it would have been easier if it was just Spanish. That's being honest. If I was in a different part of Spain, of course you have different dialects everywhere, right? But Basque being a completely different language, that was tough at times. The lifestyle as well. Obviously, you're far from home. You're by yourself. You have to grow up quickly. It would have been so much different if I was just somewhere in the U.S., like obviously on my own, just figuring things out, because everything's familiar. You have similar to the game. What's important to have in life, just as in the game, are reference points. And reference points are things that offer guidance, they offer support, they can offer comfort at times, familiarity, right? Because the game is chaotic and you need patterns to help you through the game. And if you recognize those patterns, right, it makes the game easier. So just to make a side story of that, like I'm watching Messi now in Inter Miami, and I'm like, whoa, he's a reference point for a lot of players, and they look like a completely different team because of one guy. Busquets, they look like a completely different team because of one guy. So that's an example of reference points. And so in Spain, I didn't really have any reference points, right? So I had to figure out how to adjust and adapt and learn quickly
because if not, every day was going to be a struggle. And there were really, really hard days, hard weeks. But, you know, thankfully, there were certain people that did help me out quite a bit. For example, my coach at Real Union was awesome. The first coach I was with on trial, so awesome, so supportive, knew a bit of English, and he would just always check in on me. He was so complimentary. He was, oh, I want to bring you in. I want to bring you in. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to keep my job, but I want to bring you in. But he was such a good guy because at that time I was on trial, right, for the first few months. But he was awesome, and he told the director, like, hey, you got to keep this player. You know, he's got something. And so he unfortunately didn't keep his job, but I was invited to the preseason that, you know, a few months later after doing well on trial, and then I signed the contract there. And then the next coach I had, thankfully, was another coach who spoke a little bit of English. We could connect. He valued how hard I worked. He knew that I was raw in certain areas and that I would need more time to develop because the style of play, now speaking about that, was it was a different pace of game than in the U.S. I think in the U.S. You get accustomed to this style of go, go, go.
Especially in college.
Yeah, especially in college. And in Spain, within a game, you have so many different speeds, right? At times you're walking, right? And at times the pace is very slow. And then there's times where the pace is very fast. There's times where the game is being played with a focus of possession and short passes and drawing the opponent in. And there's certain moments where the game is more direct and you're looking to play long, right? And so that balance between the verticality, right, and more control and more calm was something that I hadn't experienced, right? There were so many different, there's technically four, however many phases in the game, depending on the part of the world and the language you speak, right, the football language you speak. But in a game, I experienced so many different phases. I'm like, whoa, like this phase of the game, it's slow. Both teams will sit off, kind of build. And then there were certain moments of the game where it was like, boom, both teams are trying to hit each other on the counter. Like, whoa. Like, so in the U.S., though, I was so accustomed to go. And so in certain ways, you have to form different neural connections. You have to rewire your brain. You have to be taught new things, and you have to unlearn a lot of things as well. There were certain moments where, you know, I remember specifically one teammate of mine, you know, he would say to me, listen, man, like, take an extra touch. You know, it's so funny how sometimes you think about playing quickly when really sometimes you need to pause, and that word pausa, right? That's big in the Spanish football culture, this idea of pausa, of like, oh, can you be calm? Can you put your foot on the ball? Can you scan? Can you see the game? Not just react to the game. Like sometimes, you know, in the U.S., we're so good at reacting to the game, and part of the reason we react is because we haven't read the situation properly. So over there was this emphasis of read the situation. He was like, no, listen, man, just take an extra touch, and you'll be fine. There were times I would rush to try and make the pass, or to create this situation that wasn't there, where it wasn't ready to develop. The guy wasn't maybe in the right space, or you know, the forward didn't check. It's like, relax, wait for the situation to develop, right? And you have that calm, right? And so, there was definitely a big learning curve, and I played with a lot of good players that came from top environments, top academies, and so, it was a really, really eye-opening experience. I also had an assistant coach. The head coach I don't believe did, but the assistant coach played professionally in that club. And so he was a good reference point because, man, like this guy, he could jump into training and still do it. Yeah, and so watching him, like he literally looked like I think maybe a little bit smaller, but he looked like Iniesta. Just shifty, small midfielder. Like, man, like Spain produces amazing players. This guy is, you know, in his 40s, and he's jumping into training and dictating, and you're like, whoa, I can't get the ball off him. and so watching that, I'm like, yeah, these guys are different, man. These guys are different.
And I think that's, as I said, you know, after knowing you for 2 years now and being able to train and play alongside you, I think you definitely learned a lot in Spain because you have a very, very calm way of playing, a very intentional way of being on the ball, and analyzing the opponent, breaking them down. I'd say that's definitely had a lasting effect for you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it also helped that I played different positions, so I saw the game from different, not only was I just learning about the game in general, but I'm also learning in different lines of the field, right? Like at one point, you know, I'm playing as an 8-10, a small stint at 6, but not really in that team. There were other players who had the profile of only a 6, because I was versatile. I think that's pretty much everywhere, where if you have the profile of one position, you're going to play that one position. But for me, I was really fit, I was fast, and so I could cover ground, so I would play as an 8-10. The coach also played me as a 7, as a right winger.
Yeah.
And then actually, as I finished my time there, he was playing me more, obviously, as a 7, but then also as a right back,
Oh, really?
as a 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so he thought 2 was my best position.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, you know, the experiences I had there, playing as a right back, it was fantastic. Yeah, I played as a right back for a while, and you know, the last few games I played for them, I was a right back. My last game, I captained the team. I was playing right back, and so, yeah, it was really humbling to see different positions of the field,
Yeah.
and to grow and learn in those different positions was very cool.
Huge for your development, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So from there, then being in Spain, was that the next year you went straight to Richmond Kickers?
Yeah, so when I came home, you know, that spring, that early summer, went back to playing U23 for the summer and figuring out where am I going to go. I went to make a long story short, I'll just kind of shrink that year. I believe it was 2019. Yeah. In August of 2019, I went to the Richmond Kickers open trial because I had a good friend living in Richmond. He's like, hey man, like if you're looking for options, come to the trial.
Yeah.
See what can happen. I thought I played really well. I didn't get a call back at that time.
Okay.
You know, in those few days or that week, and so came home to Seattle, coached, you know, for a little bit to save up some money. I went to a showcase in Thailand.
Okay.
That November. Into December.
Jeez.
And then while I was in Thailand, I got an email from Richmond Kickers.
Okay.
And that led to just communication about, hey, well, what can we do next? And so then I was brought into the preseason in the winter of 2020.
Okay.
I signed in February of 2020.
Okay.
And then I spent 2020 and 2021 with Richmond Kickers.
Okay. And that's USL 1, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So how was that experience then? And I mean, even comparing it from the 5th division in Spain to what would be, I guess, the 3rd division here in the US.
Yeah, I think first of all, 2020 was a mess because of COVID, right? And so, you know, preseason's happening, then all of a sudden we're shut down for months, right? And so I think everybody in the world felt that impact for the most part. And you know, what was supposed to be a 10-month season turned into like a 4 or 5 month season, right? Because we kicked off in you know, about July, and then we were done in October. We were supposed to play, I think, 28 games. We ended up only playing 16, right? So it was just a really interesting time. Unfortunately, like I hadn't been. I dealt with a couple things before. I hadn't really been injury prone, and then I had one injury right before the lockdown, and then wasn't able to get proper treatment or be seen or get on a consistent kind of program, and that just set me back. So I came in ready to play in July when we started the games, and so I was playing. I was fit, I was healthy, but again, that niggling kind of injury, it was a quad injury, just kind of kept coming back. And so I struggled with that. When I was healthy, I played that season, but then it was really tough. You know, especially there were a couple stretches where, you know, being asked to play 2-3 games in a week when you're coming back from, you know, a couple quad injuries, not just one.
Especially musculars.
It became like a chronic issue. That was kind of tough, and so I kind of re-injured it. But again, even up until the last week of the season, I was playing in those games, in those important games, and so that was good. And then 2021 came back. Got injured in the preseason, so that was frustrating, and then that kind of set me back, and I wasn't really able to establish myself back into the team in that year. But again, learned a lot from the experience. I think there were so many good players again that I saw as reference points that I could learn from. There was you know, good camaraderie in the locker room. I think I met a lot of great people, and so overall, I think I learned a lot, and it was still a good soccer experience. I think though that in general, the level or the soccer quality wasn't as high as I would have hoped. From the standpoint of I went from such a thinking game in Spain to now reverting back to a more physical game, and it takes a toll on you mentally and physically because now you're doing a lot more physical work and a lot less mental work, a lot less reading of the game, a lot less processing. It's more reacting, which I think was frustrating for me as a player because I felt like, I'd made these strides in Spain in only a year that I hadn't made in 4 years of college, that I hadn't made in however many years of youth soccer. You know, and so that was a challenge. That was interesting. But, you know, it is what it is. I think there's something to learn from every situation, and I still learn quite a bit. I just felt like, yeah, my development as a player, it was tough in that 2 years.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
Yeah, but one of the good things I would say was developing an understanding and being able to transition positions into center back, because I played a lot of center back in training and in games there.
Okay. And was that new to you? Because I know, like you said, you were playing kind of all over in Spain, but not quite as a center back there.
Yeah, I mean, so I had done it in the summer, the last summer, I think, when I was, you know, 2 years before. That was the first time I really played center back. But for me, it was easier than playing six. The whole game is in front of you. So, you know, I think the coach then, you know, told me, like, listen, man, you could play six, so you should be able to play center back. We had to fill that spot, I think, for one game, and then I just kind of played there a couple more times.
Okay. But yeah, so you're talking about your transition then to kind of playing as a center back, and then this is kind of, I guess, in your story where I showed up, in a sense. Of course, do you want to talk about your experience in Dubai first before we met at Bay Cities last year?
Yeah, no, so it was a quick experience. You know, old coach of mine, actually an old assistant coach from Barry, from Miami, and I saw him at a combine, actually.
Okay.
After I left Richmond, I went to a combine in Chattanooga, and he happened to be there in the stands scouting, I think, for a UPSL team.
Okay.
You know, there's good players everywhere. Yeah. So he was there trying to find guys that he could bring in, you know, to a semi-pro environment. And we connected, and he was like, oh, you know, I may have a couple people that I know that can maybe connect you to Europe or, you know, to other places. And so let's stay in touch. We obviously reconnected, and within a few weeks, he was like, hey, there's a potential situation in Dubai. And so, long story short, I went over. It didn't turn out to be what it was. The connection we had that was supposed to meet me there wasn't able to. Yeah. And so now I was at the mercy of the people that were on the ground that met me there. And so the pre-contract that I had with a club it didn't come to fruition because the person on the ground that met me was telling me and my old coach, who he was communicating with as well, hey, well, he's gonna have to pay $1,000 or €1,000 to get into that environment now.
Just to train.
Yeah. So we were just like, that is not what was agreed. That's not what was talked about. So within 3-4 days, packed my bags and came home.
Okay.
And obviously then we crossed paths at Bay Cities.
Yeah. So Bay Cities, that was last year. So that was your first time playing in NISA.
Yeah.
Newer league. How was that experience for you? And I guess how would you compare kind of NISA to that USL 1 league that you were playing in?
Yeah. NISA's growing. They're trying to establish themselves. I'll be honest, like it's not a new venture. I think in the history of U.S. soccer, you've had a bunch of different leagues try to establish themselves and try to grow. There's growing pains with that, with you know, following certain rules and regulations and certain standards, and obviously the money piece, and that's why teams go, you know, defunct or, you know, fold, and that's why leagues go defunct and aren't around. And so NISA's trying to grow and evolve in a way like other leagues have. But yeah, there's growing pains, and I think the experience we had at Bay Cities kind of epitomizes that. Where we didn't have all the funding we needed, the club didn't have the resources to fully support the players. I know we were training, you know, out of just random parks, and we didn't have a trainer to help us and to support us physically. We didn't have a consistent figure as the head coach there every day. You know, and it was it at times didn't feel like a pro environment. You know, and that's not speaking towards the league. I think it's more so speaking towards the people that were running the club. And that's tough because, you know, it's not Sunday league. You know, and it's not semi-pro. You know, it's got a pro label, but at times it was being run like an amateur operation. And that wasn't just down to funding, it was down to personnel and putting people in the right positions that were capable and competent to make decisions and to lead.
And willing.
And I learned a lot from that situation as well. And one of the things I learned was, well, when you're leading a group of people, you have a responsibility to be clear about what your vision is, to outline the standards, okay, and to uphold those standards every day, and to try and get the most out of people and to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
Those are just a few of the many things you need to do, and those things were non-existent for us. And you know, I'll say it, guys showing up late every day, guys not showing up to training at all. We were struggling for months to be paid.
Yeah.
It was very tough. The conversations around the payment and the issues the club were having weren't transparent, you know, and so it just created an environment that was in a lot of ways toxic. And it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I tried my best to be a professional and show up and give my best effort every day and to help the team in a myriad of ways, right? You know, with, you know, helping with practice plans, trying to help with, you know, a periodization plan, with game analysis, with scouting out opponents.
Yeah, I mean,
know.
you were literally given the role as a player coach at some point towards the end there as well.
Yeah, and before then, like, again, it's not about titles and labels, about being a captain or a player coach. It's just about what can you bring to the team, and you know, can you have a positive impact? And that's what I was trying to do. And unfortunately, you know, we just didn't have proper leadership to fully push the process forward. And obviously, and it fell apart because of money. But I chose, obviously, as you know, to terminate my contract before then because I think there's also an element of integrity that needs to be had in those environments. And there's also the importance of treating people with respect. And I didn't feel those things were there. And so I chose to walk away. I didn't know that the club was going to go under as quickly as it did after I was gone. But for me, I was willing to step away because I didn't feel like it was right for me.
Yeah. So yeah, as you say, Bay Cities goes under. You're able to live there with your girlfriend, and at that point you start coaching. And I guess continuing to kind of fast forward through that time, because you terminated your contract around June, right? Of last year? July. Okay. And yeah, so you're going into this off season. We both eventually end up getting the same agent and ending up on the same team again. So how did that off season kind of look for you though, in terms of ending up here at Flower City?
So an old teammate of mine and a good friend of mine from Seattle hit me up one day. He said, "Hey, there's this agent Pedro, and he's looking for players. He's looking for, you know, center mids, center backs, like different players to fill out, you know, the roster in his agency." And he's like, I told him about you. Here's his number. Give him a call or send him a message, whatever. So I got in contact with him, and Pedro was on it. So we talked. He was like, "Oh no, like I see your video. I like what I see, and let's work together." So signed a contract with him, and within 2 weeks, he said, "Oh, Flower City wants to sign you." So within another few weeks, I was on a plane headed here. So yeah.
Okay.
It happened really quick.
Yeah, and we're unfortunately running out of time here. We've got to be in training in about 13 minutes here. But yeah, I mean, I'd say it's been a very interesting experience so far for both of us being here at Flower City Union. This year, Mumbi's been named captain. So it's been very interesting and very, very, I guess, cool for me to be able to kind of witness you in that capacity and to see the intentionality that you continue to lead with. Mumbi, on the side of things, as you can tell, he's incredibly intelligent. He's very observant, a very, very intentional guy in terms of relationships, and I think a lot of that bleeds into the work you do as a player. But do you also want to speak on your company, Elevate Soccer, a little bit that you do on the side?
Yeah, I've been working for a while now, since 2020, to really guide and empower players, and that's something that I always was looking for as a young player, and so I wanted to give that back. And so I started that in 2020, right after the heart of the pandemic, like the most hectic time of the pandemic. I started crafting it and slowly started bringing in kids that I could work with one-on-one on game analysis and character development, and then I started to grow it and do more. And my recent focus recently has been on the college recruiting process and helping kids take that next step in their careers and in their lives. And so it's a full circle moment. It's been a fun process. It's been a challenging process because being an entrepreneur and working for yourself is difficult, right? Difficult to establish, a foothold, because now it's a market, right? And it's the soccer world in the U.S. is a business, right? So trying to make good connections, trying to do right by people, keeping my principles, and trying to build community. That for me is super important. So if I can build community, if I can have an impact on families, on kids, then that for me is the ultimate vision.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, and like I said, Mumbi and I are roommates now, so I'm able to see him work on this daily. He puts a lot of time into this craft, a lot of effort into the kids he works with. So if there's any aspiring players that want to get to the college level or just interested in his services in terms of improving as a player, I'll be sure to leave a link to his site below and some of the pages you can check him out on. But yeah, like I said, we got to get running off to training. But before we go, is there one maybe piece of advice you would give to kids that are aspiring to play as a professional?
Absolutely. Be resilient. Be resilient. The number of experiences that I've had, it's impossible to progress if you're not resilient, because you will be put on the bench. You will be not selected or identified. You will be left behind. You will be treated badly at times. At times people will try to scam you. People will scam you. How badly do you want to play at the next level? What kind of conviction do you have? Because it gets hard. It's no longer for fun and games. It's for money, and it's for status in the pro game, right? And so if people don't feel that you can bring something that is that is valuable, you're going to be left behind. There's no participation medals at the pro level, and I think a lot of people that were handpicked and chosen as younger players oftentimes struggle with that, even when they get to college, for example. But they struggle with that because now it's like you're in the wild, right? In a lot of ways, in certain places there isn't structure, right? So how are you going to swim in those waters? Are you going to be able to make it? When someone is putting you down, are you going to be able to make it? When the pro environment is not run professionally, are you going to be able to make it? Are you going to be able to survive? Do you know how to take care of yourself? Do you know how to live on your own, right? Do you know how to manage money? Because it's a crazy life that sometimes you have to live. And if you're blowing your money, it's not going to be sustainable. So there's so many different things. You have to be resilient. You have to be resilient. And you have to be clear in who you are. That's really important. Be clear in who you are and what your principles are, and be resilient.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, thank you, Mumbi, for your time. I appreciate you spending this time with us this morning. And thank you guys if you made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you guys spending this time. And yeah, hopefully you guys are able to see the value that kind of comes in these videos. Like I said, there's no one path. There's no one way to get to the professional game. And even within the game, there's no perfect path to how you are a professional. So as Mumbi's story is highlighted, as we've got other guys highlighting their stories, yeah, hopefully you guys are inspired and getting a lot of value from these videos. So again, Mumbi, thank you for your time. And yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, it's been Malik and Mumbi. See you guys. Nice.